Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again. It's Sunday night. It's August 16th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me in my library. My name is Michael C. Hardy. This is Hardy on History. I have a history problem. I'm sure that since you're tuning in this evening, you might have a history problem as well. Drop a note in the box. Let me know where you are watching from. Doesn't mean anything. I just enjoy saying hi to people as you come online and we get to share in this evening's conversation and discussion. Had a great time at the Holston Valley, the Holston Heritage Museum this past Monday night. Great folks, great conversations. We were talking about my new book on the American Revolution. Had a great time. Upcoming week, I will excuse me. Upcoming week, I will be in Asheville, North Carolina, and that is on Thursday night, and at the Longstreet Museum in Tennessee on Saturday afternoon. So if you're out and about in any of those areas, come on out, join the conversation. We'll be talking about the American Revolution, East Tennessee, Western North Carolina. Would love to have you come out and join me and join the conversation. And I say that, and that's what we do on Sunday nights, these little kind of informal chats, things that I've been working on. We're just sharing in that conversation. And this week, we're going to go a little post-war in our discussion and talk a little bit about the Reconstruction time period. And I know so many times people say that Reconstruction was worse than the war in certain areas and certain communities, which may absolutely be 100% true, but we don't tend to write a lot about that time period. And I pulled off 5 books off my shelf, and I flipped through these books just to see what it said about the Reconstruction time period. In so many cases, when we get to March of 1865, or April, May of 1865, that's the end of the discussion. And that's not really how it happens. Now, I pulled off my shelves this evening a book on Jacksonville, Florida, and the war. And this book ends at the end of 1865. I pulled off a book on Dr. Ibos's book on Civil War Macon. And this book pretty much ends at the end of 1865. And I pulled off Jeffrey Weaver's book on Wise and Buchanan County, Virginia. And this book pretty much ends. I don't remember when this book ends. This book doesn't go beyond early May of 1865, so no Reconstruction in that book. I pulled off the book I have on Knoxville, Tennessee, and the war. It's called Lincolnites and Rebels: A Divided Town. And this book, I forgot where this one ended. Has a chapter on retribution and reconciliation, but it does not really push beyond 1866. And then I pulled another Tennessee book. Don't you wish your county history looked like this? That's what they all need to look like. This is on Washington County, Tennessee, and there is a chapter in this book on the war, Civil War, and Reconstruction by my late friend Jim Maddox. But it is not really, when it comes to the Reconstruction time period, is really not a lot of detail in the book about that time period. And those were 5 books that I pulled off, just trying to see what was out there. I think so many times we want to put the war in this little box from April of 1861 to April of 1865. And I think we should push that discussion out either way. into the late 1850s and definitely through at least 1870, and talk about some of the things that were going on, because the war does not happen in a vacuum. Um, but once again, we talk about the Reconstruction time period as being bad. There's not a lot of documentation out there that is in print. Um, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening. Good evening, Bobby Joe Goodson and Al and Robert and Gavin down in Morganton. Gavin, we're going to be talking about Morganton this evening. Our friend Jason Bouchures, Adam, hope you are well. And Jason Lloyd, hope you all are well. Jason's been out doing a lot of great living history stuff lately, and reminds me of me in some of my younger days. I get out and do living history stuff these days, but I'm an old guy, so I still have a lot of fun. But good evening. Hope everybody is well. There's Robert Carswell from Tobaccoville. Hope everybody is doing really good. Hope you're enjoying the heat. I am not. But that's another discussion for another time. So I've been going down this road with a couple of local history projects, and I've been trying to develop. So I wrote a book. Let me go back. I wrote a book several years ago about Watauga County and the Civil War. And I have a little chapter in there on Reconstruction. And that was one of the things that the reviewer, I think in the Appalachian Journal, criticized the book about. And I did talk more about Reconstruction. And to be honest, it is hard at times to talk about Reconstruction. Newspaper editors, where we get a lot of our information from, would not write anything bad about Unionists, about former slaves, about government officials, because government officials could shut down your newspaper and put you in jail. And that happened in the Reconstruction time period. So we've been kind of limited on what we could find. Recently, there are a lot of different databases that people can use, but recently, past few years, couple of years, 2 or 3 years, Family Search has started digitizing and putting the records from the Freedmen's Bureau online. And so for the past couple of days, I have been digging into those records. Strangely enough, I've not actually found very much for what I am looking for, the counties that I am looking for. But I've kind of developed a little story that will be up on Looking for the Confederate War tomorrow, maybe later tonight. And I would like to share a little of that with you. Burke County, North Carolina, is just south of the county that I live in, kind of southeast of the county I live in. I pass through Burke County going various places all the time. I'm speak in Burke County. They have a great North Carolina history room at the public library in Burke County, a couple of great museums down in Burke County. So I've spent a lot of time down there. And it's adjacent to other counties that I am studying, but it's rich. So the sub-district for the Freedmen's Bureau was located in Morganton, which is the county seat of Burke County. And I started researching that, hoping I would get details into some of these other places I'm looking for. Not so much so far. But I found an interesting story that a couple of people have helped me flesh out recently. And of course, I had to shut my computer down and restart it, and I don't actually have my notes up. So when we think of the Freedmen's Bureau, and Burke County, let's go back. Burke County's probably most famous story dealing with the dealing with the American Civil War, is the story of Colonel Isaac Avery, who led the 6th North Carolina, and at the Battle of Gettysburg, he's in charge of Hoke's Brigade. He is mortally wounded on the evening of July 2nd, 1863, and writes that famous note, Major, tell my father I died with my face toward the enemy. And that's in the State Museum in Raleigh. And one of those famous stories from the Battle of Gettysburg. Um, that there's another Avery. One of his brothers is in the 33rd North Carolina. He is killed during the Overland Campaign. W. Avery is killed. He was a state member of the General Assembly. He's killed in a skirmish between my house and Morganton. Another one of the Avery sons, A.C. Avery, actually married one of the Morrison girls. So he would have been a brother-in-law to D.H. Hill and Stonewall Jackson and Rufus Barringer. So Burke County is a good history. There's a raid there in June of 1864 where a group of raiders come out of East Tennessee and they raid Camp Vance in Burke County. And then Stoneman goes through there in, we'll say, April of 1865. I don't have any of those notes on. So Burke County has a lot of Confederate companies that come out of there, some Unionists that come out of there. But as I was hunting for the counties that I'm actually researching, I found all this Burke County stuff. And I have shared some of it with some other people. But I'm going to share a little piece of another piece of that this evening. We talk about Reconstruction. We talk about Reconstruction in the South. We talk about white people, black people. We talk about people suffering untold horrors. I don't think we understand. I really don't. In March of 1867, the U.S. Congress actually passes a joint resolution authorizing the unexpended Freedmen Bureau funds. They can use those funds to purchase food supplies to prevent or alleviate starvation and extreme want. There was an estimated 53,945 people thought to be destitute in Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, and North Carolina. Almost 54,000 people. So it would be the various Freedmen Bureau's agents in the sub-districts that were responsible for distributing these rations. I have no idea how word was spread. I imagine they could get circulars printed someplace. I imagine some of it's a word of mouth. But in Morganton, and maybe in the town you live in as well, but in late June and early July of 1867, the people came in. They had to register. Now, these people coming in looking for food assistance run the gamut of anybody you could think of. There were the widows of Unionist men. Margaret Lale, who was supporting 4 children, applied. She told the agent that, quote, my husband was a Union man and was shot by one of Patterson's home guards. There's another lady named Nancy York. She's taking care of an aged father and 3 children. She told the agent that her husband, William York, possibly of Company B of the 11th North Carolina, was a Union man, conscripted into Confederate service, deserted, shot by a member of the Home Guard for deserting. She had no land, no cow, no creature. She made her mark on the document, received 28 pounds of pork and 196 pounds of corn. Myra Cook had 6 children to take care of. Her husband, Edward Cook, was a Unionist, was shot twice by the Home Guard. The second time he was in the woods when he was shot, and Myra took care of him for 8 days until he died. That's group 1 who come in. Group 2 are claimants that said that their husbands actually served in the Union Army during the war and died. Elamine Couch is one of those. I don't know her husband's name. He was killed, leaving her destitute. Lucinda Summers' husband was also killed while in federal service. She was destitute. They all made their mark and got food assistance. The greatest number of people who got assistance were kind of tight lipped about their situation. Elizabeth Simpson, Mary Smith, and Louisa Pettit were living with three dependent children. They told the agent that they were, quote, landless and destitute caused by the war. They didn't mention their husbands had died during the war, who had been killed or whatever. They were just destitute, and their problems were caused by the war. They were given 30 pounds of pork, 250 pounds of corn. Likewise, Mary Clark, Rebecca Short, and Mary Brackett, with 10 children, were all widows and destitute caused by the war. It's funny, as I was going through looking at this county and their records, how many groups of women seem to be living together with no male support. Fanny Franklin told the agent that her husband had been injured during the war in the head and they were destitute. How many of the destitute who came to Morganton to seek relief were connected with the Confederate Army? That's a great story. And great question. In some of the cases, they mention that. Huldah Lewis told the agent that her husband was, quote, crippled in the rebel service and they were destitute. Elizabeth Sherrill and Rebecca Matthews, trying to support two children, had lost their husbands in the rebel army. Nancy Smith and Macy Bingham had husbands who had died in northern prison camps. Polly Christenberg was trying to take care of her aged father and 5 children. Her husband had died during the war. William Watts and his wife complained that they had lost, this is what he writes or said, quote, lost all my sons in the Confederate Army. He was over 60 years old and was destitute. Henry Goins was one of the few Confederate soldiers who personally came in. He enlisted at the age of 18 in Burke County on May 10, 1861, and was mustered in as a private in what became Company E of the 16th North Carolina Troops. Goins was wounded in the left arm and right elbow and captured at Gettysburg, July 1863. He was later paroled in 1863, rejoined his command, his regiment, in time to be paroled at Appomattox. Goins told the agent in 1867 that he was, quote, a volunteer in the rebel army and had lost an arm, and the other arm had been stiffened at the Battle of Gettysburg. He wrote, I can't feed myself and am entirely destitute. Goins was given 16 pounds of pork and 112 pounds of corn. If there were applicants that were turned away, those files have either not been made available to us online yet or they were not kept. As I said earlier, I think Reconstruction is largely not understood on the community level. And I mentioned these 5 books about Washington County, Tennessee, about Knoxville, Tennessee, about Wise and Buchanan counties, maybe Buchanan County, Virginia, about Macon, about Jacksonville, Florida. None of those books really dive more than 1865 into that story. To be honest, and I'm interested if your county has a standalone history of Reconstruction or if it's a part of a bigger book, please drop it in the box because I would love to know. The only book I have in my library that is a standalone county level Reconstruction book, and I actually picked this up last year and I've not read it yet. It's called After the War Was Over, Reconstruction in Washington County, Virginia, 1865 to 1870. And it's a little book. This is the only book that I have that is a standalone county or community level book. Now I've got books that cover Reconstruction on a bigger scale, I've got the one by Henry. I've got another one that I can't remember the name of the author, which nobody likes. Drawing a blank. I've got the one by Mark Bradley about North Carolina. There's a lot of good stuff in that book. It's actually a pretty good book. But that's really the only standalone county or community reconstruction book that I have in my library. So I think there's a lot of work to do on that subject. Um, and I'm looking into it. I found, and I'm not working on Burke County right now, but I found those two stories about men who were trying to avoid service that were caught by the Home Guard. That's a story out there. If I was writing a book on the 16th North Carolina, I would have that story in there because it's just makes what we do so much better. Um, so much better. So, full post will be up later tonight or in the morning. I'll probably advertise it in the morning on over at Looking for the Confederate War. And I really look at trying to develop this story a little bit more and see where it goes. Yeah, Jason Boshears, I agree with Robert down here. If you want the start of the problems that lead to the 1860s, it starts with Hamilton versus Jefferson. Hamilton and John Adams and George Washington, to a lesser extent, really favored that big, all powerful, centralized government, whereas Thomas Jefferson and John Tyler and several other folks did not believe. We could add Alexander Hamilton or Jefferson Davis or other folks like that into that equation, but they wanted the control to remain, the power to remain with the states. And a lot of times I will tell people we never really solved the issue that led us to the war in the 1860s. If you disagree with that, I'm sorry. But you still fight those same issues that every time you go to the ballot box. That big government versus less government, who is going to be controlling your life. That goes back to Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson when they were in the cabinet under George Washington. Adam, I have a funny, that's not funny, but I have a fella who contacted me late last week wanting me to get on the bandwagon of getting Holden's impeachment expunged from the record. Not just pardon, which the General Assembly in North Carolina pardoned him several years ago. He wants it to get it expunged. I think Holden was guilty. So there we go. And Jason Boshears, I agree that people didn't want to talk about it, and I get that. But I think there are records that that are now becoming available that we can access that helps us tell part of that story. Now, with all those accounts that I read just a minute ago, it is only one side of the story. I noticed when I was going through these records, the Freedmen Bureau records, the sub agents in these districts had to report any white on black, black on white, black on black violence related to that time period. He had to report any indentures and several other things. And I think when he makes a report of some event that has happened, we're only getting one side of the story. We really don't know unless they are hauled into court and the court record survives. We really don't know but just a fraction of that story, but it's more of a story than we had. And so I think that's important to talk about. Jason, I'm going to try and send you some links here. Jason Boshears, I'm going to try and send you some links here. Maybe we can help. Maybe I can help. I just have to go back and look at some of the stuff I've been looking at for Tennessee counties. Jason, there's not a lot. Jason Lloyd, there's not a lot of stuff out there. Eric Foreigner is the book I was referring to, Reconstruction book that everybody hates because, well, we'll just leave that there. But I have that, and I have Henry's book on Reconstruction, and Mark Bradley's book on Reconstruction, and Hamilton's book on Reconstruction. But that's it. I will admit that part of my library is probably a little weak. I have biographies on like presidents, Andrew Johnson and Grant, few North Carolina governors like Holden and Worth. There's not a biography on R. Todd Caldwell. But yeah, about knocked my lemonade off here. Brian Blankenship, hope you're well this evening. David Pope, is there a good book on East Tennessee and Reconstruction? Like East Tennessee is a geographical unit. As I mentioned before, the Knoxville book has a small chapter. The History of Washington County, Tennessee has a small chapter, but I don't have that book. Now, there are several books. Well, I take that back. There's another book I had over there. Is it Gross's book that goes through 1869? Gross. I think it does go through 1869, and I do have that book. But I think so many times we miss some of the stories. Where's the stuff about the people coming in to give food? That whatever that number was that I read a minute ago about the destitute people in 1867. What was the actual number? Almost 54,000 people in various southern states. Nobody ever mentions that. I think that's just one more of those untold stories that we need to explore. And as I mentioned, they were feeding everybody. They were feeding white Southern Unionists. They were feeding white Confederate families, white Confederates. They were feeding black families. So a lot of work that needs to be done. And as usual, we want us to be telling our history. We don't want to be dependent upon other people in faraway places to be sharing our history. It is Southern history. And that's one of the things we need to do. I am looking specifically for certain counties in Western North Carolina to beef up some projects that I am working on. And so this will not be a deep across the South research project for me. Just about 4 counties is what I'm looking for. And so far, I found a grand total of 5 little pieces in those 4 counties. If I was working on Burke County, North Carolina, boy, there's a lot of stuff there for a book, but I'm not so sure that's the one for me right now. So what do you think? Reconstruction, your community. Is it a story that needs to be told? I would argue yes. And it's a story that's really not being told in many places across the South. So Jason Lloyd, we actually talked a while back about doing something on Belle Wiley. Maybe we'll get to that, Lord willing, sometime this winter. It's a little busy right here with edits for the Plymouth book and the Lee book last week. Got to add something to the Lee book. I had to do my newspaper article yesterday. Got an article for Carolina Mountain Life to get turned in really soon. And it's just kind of crazy busy being on the road and all that good stuff. But we'll get to it, Lord willing. That's the plan. So that's my talk this evening, folks. Feel free to drop comments into the box. Anything that you would like to chat about this evening, we will give a stab at it. Otherwise, got a bunch of books to get up and reshelf. I will add, I added one new book to the library this week. To book on Civil War flags of Kentucky, both Confederate and Union. It's volume 1. I am reserving my opinion about it for right now. It has over 5,000 endnotes, but it has no images and no index. So, and it is almost 400 pages. But well, we'll hang on until volume 2 comes out and see if there are images and an index. I guess I have become accustomed to good books like the new book on North Carolina's wartime flags and the fantastic Tennessee book on wartime flags. So we'll see what that, I don't even know where I'm going to put that book on the shelf. Bobby Joe Goodson talks about the mass migration to the west. Yes, I discovered that to a great deal when I was working on my book on the 58th North Carolina. There were some folks, including Lieutenant Colonel of the regiment, who wound up in Coos County, Oregon, which is just as far as you can get from Western North Carolina and still be in the continental United States. And it's not just him and his family. There were a dozen families who went out to Oregon after the end of the war. It's good to see our Australian friend this evening. Hope things are well in the land down under. Somebody should write a song about that. But remember, Robert E. Lee is always very guarded in what he writes after the war. Just, you know, he'd been indicted for treason, and he just, there are a few conversations that Lee had with fellow faculty members at Washington College that the people having those conversations ran back to their office and jotted all of these notes down. Some places where Lee was critical of other folks. That would probably make a great talk as well, one Sunday night. But Lee, for the most part, is very guarded about what he says in public. We all know that all Lee had to say was, "Hey, boys, let's go at it again," and the war would have restarted. That's all Lee would have had to do. And I don't think Lee wanted that one bit after seeing all of that carnage for 4 years. Early's exile correspondence, probably some really good stuff. David Pope, who was he talking to? William Preston Johnson, yes. William Allen's notes, yes. That's the ones that are in, I think it's Gallagher's book, back there on the shelf behind me. But yes. So David Pope, his brother. Cool. I look forward to seeing where that goes. Any type of new information we get out there. you know, that's just great stuff. Our history is so rich, and the deeper I dig, um, the more that I find, and the more I realize that we don't really know anything. Um, Jason Bashir's, I will see what I can send you. I will also say that I don't think there's any type of index that I have found so far to this material. So for some of it, pick your geographical area and just click, 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 um, and find all kinds of things that take you down all kinds of rabbit holes. Uh, been down a couple of those the past couple of days. All right, folks. Any more comments? Drop them in the box. We'll give a stab at them and see what we can do. Otherwise, we're going to get up, reshelf some books. Once again, I'll be in Asheville this Thursday evening, and I will be at the Longstreet Museum in Tennessee on Saturday afternoon. So if you are out and about, please feel free to come and join me. Jason Boshiers, you are right. 100 times right. More questions than answers. I set down this road specifically to look for freedmen's schools in Caldwell, Watauga, Mitchell, and Yancey, and not found any of that yet. But hey, interesting stuff. All right, folks, I'm going to sign off for this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember to check out the full post on looking for the Confederate War tomorrow. I will put a copy of the link up later. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope every one of y'all have a fantastic evening this evening. I hope you have a great week. Please continue to get out, research, and share that history. That's what it takes, is us talking about it. All of these interesting little things, sometimes big things, but all these interesting little things. Y'all have a fantastic week, and as usual, God bless.